Some jokes hit harder than others. You hear them once, and they stay with you for years. For a long time, comedians have stepped onto television stages and delivered jokes that slipped into everyday talk and lines we quote with friends. From Louis C.K.'s, "Of course, but maybe," built on a small shrug and a dark turn, to Dave Chappelle's "Baby on the Corner," which turned a street moment into a classic. These are the iconic TV jokes and why they landed so well. Dave Chappelle, 3 a.m., baby on the corner in the ghetto.
How they know I don't talk like that every day? Stop talking like that. Stop talking like white copper.
It starts with Dave Chappelle. His 3 a.m. baby on the corner bit is storytelling at its best. The setup is simple but vivid. Chappelle's riding in a limousine at 3 in the morning. His driver takes him through the roughest neighborhood you can imagine. Gun stores on every corner, crackheads literally jumping out of trees. The whole scene feels dangerous. Then the driver just leaves him there, abandoning him in a limo at 3 a.m. in front of a project building. Chappelle's terrified, scanning for landmarks in case he needs to run. That's when he spots something that makes no sense. A baby standing alone on the corner at 3 in the morning. He's wrestling with himself. Part of him knows this baby might need help, but another part is genuinely scared of what's happening. When he finally rolls down the window to check, the punchline lands perfectly. The baby looks right at him and says, "I'm selling weed." It's misdirection wrapped in social commentary, and the story feels so real you swear you were there with him. Chappelle's genius is just the beginning. Kevin Hart, swearing at my teacher.
I was mad, yo. I was so fucking scared. I was like, y'all see the old lady and a little boy, but nobody saw the black fucking swirl missing?
Kevin Hart's bit about swearing at his teacher takes physical comedy and turns it into pure chaos. Hart gets in trouble at school. His teacher sends a note home, and the note crosses a line. It basically says, maybe if Hart's mom paid more attention, he wouldn't be such a fool in class. His mom loses it and tells young Kevin to march back to school and tell that teacher to mind her damn business. Before I come down there and beat her ass. Hart captures what it feels like to be a kid suddenly permitted to curse out an adult. He practices in the mirror, gets his lines perfect, and knows he's got a big moment ahead. The next morning on the school bus, he's hyping up his friends, telling them it's about to go down. And then it does. The teacher asks what his mom said. Hart takes a deep breath, and what comes out isn't the 2 curse words his mom used. It's 76. He transforms into Samuel L. Jackson in an elementary school outfit, unloading every profanity he's ever heard on this poor teacher. His friends are going wild, and Hart ends up suspended. The magic is in how Hart commits to the performance, playing both the confident kid and the maniac who takes it way too far. It's a childhood embarrassment we all recognize, delivered with Hart's signature energy that makes it impossible not to laugh. And if Hart's all about energy, the next comedian is all about breaking down the mechanics. Shane Gillis. Best Trump impressions.
Everybody.
Oh, hey. What a great lady. I talked to her backstage, and wonderful woman. The dits are real.
Shane Gillis made waves with his Trump impressions. But what makes them stick isn't just that he does Trump. It's that he breaks down exactly how anyone can do it. You don't need to sound like him. You just need the cadence. Trump describes something, then says he described it. What a big room this is. I walked in here and I said, wow, what a big room. Every single time. That's the pattern. Gillis shows how Trump barely moves his body, just his hands. He sits back in his throat when he talks. The greatest country. He demonstrates the difference between bad Trump impressions and good ones right there on stage. Suddenly, everyone watching feels like they could pull it off. But the brilliance comes when Gillis puts Trump in absurd scenarios. Trump is confused about why people are homeless. I walked out, I saw them, I said, "Why are you living in tents?" Or Trump talking about pride parades. I like it, but they're going a little overboard with the dancing. The bit works because Gillis respects the craft while being completely irreverent. He's inviting the audience into how comedy gets built, Not every comedian does that. Some would rather make you uncomfortable first. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you're enjoying this content so far, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch these videos without subscribing. Imagine what we could accomplish if everyone subscribed. We all thank you for your continued support. Louis C.K. Of course, but maybe. Oh my God.
Okay, like of course, children who have nut allergies need to be protected. Of course.
Louis C.K.'s "of course, but maybe" bit is controversial from the first sentence. The structure itself becomes the joke. Louis explains that his brain has two voices arguing. The thing he believes and the thing he doesn't believe but can't shut up. Of course, but maybe. He starts with nut allergies. Of course, children with nut allergies need protection. Of course, we keep their food separate and have medication ready. But maybe if touching a nut kills you, you're supposed to die. The audience gasps. Louis immediately pulls back. Of course not, Jesus. The pattern is locked in. He moves to the soldiers. Of course, if you're fighting for your country and you get shot, it's tragic. But maybe if you pick up a gun and go to another country and you get shot, it's not that surprising. Then comes slavery. Of course, slavery is the worst thing that has ever happened, every single time. But maybe every major human achievement was built with slaves. The pyramids, the railroads, and modern technology were assembled in factories with suicide nets outside. The bit is deeply uncomfortable and brilliantly structured. Louis isn't saying he agrees with the maybe side. He's showing how dark human logic gets when we separate moral truth from cold historical fact. It's comedy that makes you think as hard as it makes you laugh. Louis pushes moral boundaries, but the next comedian walks a line most won't even approach. Tom Segura, funny disabilities.
Your imagination is serving you correctly.
Tom Segura's funny disabilities bit walks a tightrope nobody else will touch. His premise is simple. Physical flaws are funny. Disabilities are not. But some are. The rest are up for debate. Segura offers 3 examples to prove his point. First, foreign accent syndrome. Completely real condition, absolutely hilarious. Someone gets head trauma and wakes up speaking their native language with a foreign accent. A farmer in Alabama hits his head and suddenly sounds completely different. The tractor trailer fell. The best case was a British woman who lived her entire life in the UK, had an accident, and woke up speaking English with a Chinese accent. Segura breaks down how hard it is to do that impression without squinting. She's white, so this is fine. A white British lady just happens to talk this way now. You want a cup of tea? Taste blue. Then comes persistent genital arousal disorder. People who can't stop having orgasms every 90 seconds, can't hold jobs, can't function normally. But the closer is Tourette's. Segura tells the story of being the new kid at Catholic school, sitting behind a kid with Tourette's during Mass. The priest starts talking. The kid responds with vulgar outbursts, and nobody reacts. Segura is laughing so hard he sounds like he's having a stroke. Years later, they get a substitute teacher who wasn't warned. The kid starts his tics. The teacher has no idea what's happening. Total chaos. Watching this substitute get completely broken by a 10-year-old is comedy gold. Segura shows you can make anything funny if you're honest about it. Honesty sometimes leads to backlash, which is exactly what happened to the next comedian. Sam Morrill. Some of the best of Sam Morrill.
I ran into my biological father recently. I told my friend, he was like, is your biological father a good person? And I was like, if he were, I probably would not refer to him as my biological father.
Sam Morrill's alligator baby controversy shows what happens when a joke crosses the wrong person's line. Morrill performs at the Comedy Cellar 2 weeks after a baby is eaten by an alligator at Disney. He figures enough time has passed to try the joke. I don't mean to come off as a gun nut. I just think if that baby were carrying a weapon, he'd still be with us. A woman in the front row says, no. She insists he can't joke about that. Moral asks if she watched the baby's funeral on TV because if she had, she would have seen the mother say, "See you later, alligator," through tears. The woman walks out. Her husband stays. The woman emails the comedy seller afterward. Moral reads the email on stage. A disgusting Sam Morrill disrespected the 2-year-old child who was murdered by the alligator at Disney. Murdered is an interesting word choice, which makes it sound like the alligator got paid to do it. The email goes on. She was so offended that she had to leave, and the staff followed her to make sure her drinks were being paid for. She posted about it on every social media platform, called Morrill a pathetic excuse for a human, then ended with, "He can go fly a kite." The club owner offers to comp the woman for another night. Morrill hopes they accept so he can be the comedian booked for that show. The bit becomes a perfect example of how comedians turn controversy into more material. While Morrill deals with angry audience members, the next comedian aims at her own people. Michelle Wolf, Titanic, explains how white women are the problem.
We have to stop talking about dicks and inches, because I don't know how much an inch is.
Michelle Wolf isn't scared to call out her own demographic. Her bit about white women starts simply. Women don't want equality. They want to be better than men. They want to do to men what men did to women. But then Wolf shifts gears. We're blaming everything on white men these days. Sure, they deserve some of it, but white women need to admit we're also part of the problem. Some of the stuff white men did was too clever to be their idea alone. Giving Native Americans blankets with smallpox? That was definitely a woman's idea. Mean girl energy written all over it. Then comes the Titanic metaphor. White women of this generation have completely abandoned white men. We are riding and fleeing immediately. We're all Rose from the Titanic. We grabbed a door and shoved a white man into the sea. I am literally freezing. Wolf portrays all her historical women as millennials. The Titanic lifeboats full of women complaining is perfect. It's so annoying that the boat sank. How do you not see an iceberg? Isn't that literally his whole job? The closer hits hard. White women weren't oppressed the same way. We couldn't vote or have bank accounts, but we had nicer houses. Very air-conditioned depression, 4-poster mahogany beds. Sometimes things aren't fair for me. Men kept women comfortable, and it's almost impossible to start a revolution from under a duvet. It's brutal honesty disguised as self-deprecating humor. Showing comedy can be just as sharp when you turn the mirror on yourself. Speaking of sharp observations, the next comedian nails what it's like dating someone with 0 problems. Taylor Tomlinson. Dating someone with no emotional baggage.
And after a minute, he goes, "Honestly, no." And I was like, oh my God, because now I have to be the terrible thing that happens to him.
Taylor Tomlinson's bit about dating someone with no emotional baggage is pure relatable chaos. Her boyfriend has never been through anything difficult. He's just good all the time. Goes to bed and says, "Good night," not "Oh, death." Wakes up and says, "Oh, this morning," not "Why." He whistles recreationally. Tomlinson is like, "Do you know who the president is? This is disrespectful." She asked him on their first date if anything terrible had ever happened to him. After thinking about it, he said honestly, "No." Tomlinson realized, oh my God, now I have to be the terrible thing that happens to him. She wants to be the one. Doesn't matter which one. The one they marry, the one that got away, or the one that set their car on fire. Just remember me. Hall of Fame or Hall of Shame, as long as my picture's on the wall. The kicker comes when she realizes how easy his life has been because he's never had sex in a car before. Never. He's like, "No, but I'm down." She's like, "You're dead. We're not brainstorming." The observation is perfect. Car sex is for children or criminals, people outside the law with nowhere to go. If you've never had sex in a car, that means you've always had a place to be intimate. That is a privilege. If your ribs have never been bruised by a center console, we have nothing to say to each other. It's smart, quotable, and shows how the best comedy comes from honest observations about modern relationships. Tomlinson explores dating, but the next comedian takes on how we talk about everything. Mark Normand, things you can say to a man that you can't say to a woman.
I did some research on it. Douchebag actually bad for women. It's not good for you. So apparently the guy who invented it, kind of a douche.
Mark Normand's bit about politically correct terms shows how arbitrary our sensitivities really are. Things you can say to a man that you can't say to a woman. A woman tells him, "I'm gonna kidnap you." He's like, "Wow, I could never say that to a woman. She'd call the police." But the bit takes off when Norman dives into PC language itself. It used to be stupid. Now it's learning disabled. Some PC language makes sense. Native American is better because they're not from India. But African American feels strange. He doesn't have African American friends. He has black friends. The absurdity builds. We don't say African Canadian. White people are just terrified to say the word black. You could corner a white guy and ask what color Ray Charles is. He'd be like, "He's blind." What's his ethnicity? Piano player. You can tell PC language is kind of performative because you never use it in an emergency. Takes too long. Then Normand delivers the closer. An Asian American man got into a car accident, not because they're bad drivers. Ran over an African American gentleman crossing the street slowly, not because they do that. The guy's really hurt, drowning in a pool of his own blood, not because he can't swim. The guy's dead. The bit works because Normand exposes how we drop the euphemisms when things get real. It's observational comedy that makes you rethink your own words. Normand questions our language, but the next comedian questions something even bigger. Chris Rock. Chris Rock lists God's mistakes.
You ever read the Bible? What does the Bible say happened on the seventh day? God rested.
Chris Rock takes on religion with his God's mistakes bit. Every religion believes God doesn't make mistakes. Rock calls it out immediately. That's ambitious. No mistakes? Ever read the Bible? What happened on the seventh day? God rested. Seems odd that a perfect being would need to rest. Have you ever been doing something that was going perfectly and decided to take a rest? No. But what has happened is you messed up and thought, "Let me rest before I make this worse." The examples come fast. Porcupine? Can't eat it, can't hug it, mistake. Quicksand? Sand you can drown in, mistake. Then comes the big one. Mississippi, just a big chunk of racist dirt. Rock was there and couldn't even tell what year it was. He compares Mississippi to that scary drive from the Caribbean airport to the resort. You're seeing the worst poverty imaginable. Then you get to the resort, and suddenly, Jamaica's nice. They give you one pina colada and you forgive everything. You take one sip and you're like, "That baby wasn't really dead, right? I can't wait to go jet skiing." Rock uses absurd examples to make a philosophical point. If God is perfect, why does creation include so many flawed things? He's not being shocking for no reason. He's using comedy to question religious certainties we take for granted. The confidence and specificity show why he's a legend. And to close things out, one final observation about the Bible itself. Rory Scovel, German accent, Christian comedy, Eve and Snake.
If you guys know anything about the Christian comedy circuit, and I, refuse to believe that the entire crowd doesn't like Christian comedy.
Rory Scovel wraps things up with one simple thought about the Bible. People say it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. But Scovel wishes it were Steve, because Steve wouldn't have been dumb enough to talk to a snake. Think about it. Eve, did you even do research? Do the other animals talk? They don't, so something's up, girlfriend. Steve wouldn't have fallen for that. Steve would have been like, "What the hell is that? Is that a talking snake? Get out of here, get out of my yard." Steve would have already called the Garden of Eden his yard right out of the gate. It's lighthearted and playful. Scovel isn't attacking religion. He's just imagining alternate scenarios. Steve probably would have handled that situation better, and honestly, he's not wrong. And that's the journey. From Chappelle's masterful storytelling to Scovel's playful biblical revision, these comedians show us what makes jokes truly iconic. It's not just about being funny. It's about structure, honesty, vulnerability, and taking risks that make audiences uncomfortable before they crack up. These are the jokes that define careers, that get quoted at parties, that make people say, "Oh man, you gotta hear this bit." If you enjoyed watching, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and drop us a note in the comments letting us know what you want to see us do next.